Okay, so if your family's like mine, your family does a terrible job of watering the plants. Maybe you've got your kids out there and they're going out there with a big thing full of water and trying to water the plants, and to get them to remember to do that, and so my wife and my kids basically kill everything. So I basically said I'd had enough of it. I'd been looking at drip irrigation for a while. I have experience changing out my own sprinkler heads, things like that, relocating a sprinkler head. All that stuff's really simple to do once you kind of get a good handle on it, and it really is very simple. But anyway, I decided that I wanted to run irrigation into the various places where I have plants. We all like to have pretty plants around our yard and the front of the house and other things. Make us feel good, when we're sitting in the backyard. We like seeing different colors, at least I do. And so I want my plants to live. And so my experience in the past is we'd plant them and nobody'd stay on top of watering them, and then they all die. So anyway, I'd had enough. So I'd looked into drip irrigation, and so I've done several projects already. Now I have one, I'm looking at it right now. I have a detached garage at my house, and I did one little retaining wall where I installed a row of, probably about 8 or 9 pretty plants along the back of it. It looks great. And I ran drip irrigation into that by tapping into an existing sprinkler head that was close to where it was. Now, word of caution here. The first thing I did when I did that is I just changed the direction of one of my sprinkler heads. It happened to be located parallel to where it was, and it was doing a good job of watering all the plants in that one particular location. The challenge with that is because of calcium and other things that are in the water, the water would stain the side of the garage, so it looked bad. So I realized that the way I needed to do that was to run drip irrigation. So again, I tapped into existing sprinkler head like this one here and ran it over there. I also have a couple of large potted plants in the back corner of my pool, and I had an existing sprinkler head there, and so just a couple days ago I tapped into that and move that, and so now I've run drip irrigation into those plants, and so now they're actually going to be able to live because those plants are basically dead right now. I'm going to put some new ones in a minute, but I'm going to take you to show you that in a second. Now in front of the house, we have a porch that runs the whole full length of the house, and we've got 6 or 7, I forget the number, we just got a bunch of potted plants that go down the porch. Well, my wife had assigned my son or my daughter to go in and then, every day just go water them, and then the question was, did you water them? Did you water them? And then everything's dying. We're pulling them out, putting new ones in, wasting, throwing money away. So I decided it was time to invest the money and run drip irrigation into all of those. Now, that one is about 90% done. I'm going to show you at the tail end what else I've got to do, which is basically hide the tubing that I'm going to be using. Over here, I've just got some finishing touches, the one by the pool, and I'll show you that in a moment too. So this part right here is just for illustration purposes only. This is meant to mimic. Now these side pieces are just stopping it from going over, so ignore those T's at the end. And so this shows where example, and this is basically exactly what I did over at the potted plants over there. I had an existing sprinkler head that was probably about 10 inches or so from the pavers around my pool. And I teed into that, as you can see here. Basically I did that. Now, some of the things that you've got to look for in this process are some key components that at first drove me nuts because I didn't understand it. So I'm gonna let you get away with not having the pain that I went through. So here you can see as an example, we've got just a typical adapter that basically takes you from 3/4, now this is 3/4, and here in Florida it's either 3/4 or 1 inch, depending on how long it is and how big your yard is. It could be as much as a 1/2 inch maybe in your area, I doubt it, but regardless, whatever size PVC you're using, you're gonna need to use the equivalent of that. So the example I'm showing today is 3/4 inch PVC. Here you got what's called a slip. Slip basically means it's not threaded. So it just slips on, and you use PVC glue, and you glue it on there, and it melts it and heats it and seals it together. On the other side of this, it's threaded, okay? So that's in the same way that you would do here, albeit a different size. This is going from 3/4 into 3/4, so 3/4 female into 3/4 male, which goes into the sprinkler head. So same kind of concept at the end of the day, depending on what size sprinkler head you're running. Okay, does that make sense? I hope it does. If I'm squinting a little bit, this is Florida, and it's an overcast day today, but I got really blue eyes, and it's a pain. So anyway, you can see there, slip on, threaded, right? So obviously that, if I'm gluing that on. Now this piece here is critical. This is one of the things I think that throws some people off, and you're not sure. you've got to realize that this is the tubing that you use, the initial tubing. You'll go down to a smaller size tubing later on when you go into drip. But this just goes onto here, and that secures onto the end of it. So the threads on the inside of this and all the other attachments are different than the threads here. So you've got to go from the PVC thread to the threading size used for this. So I'll put a link to this particular part down in the comment, or down in the section below. You look down there, I'll put a link to all these parts down there. And so you got to have that so you can tap into the PVC. Now, once you tap into the PVC like that, I'm trying not to tighten down too much because I made that mistake earlier and couldn't get it off by hand. And so this would go into this part right here. So you just want to wiggle that down in there until it gets over top of that. And then this will just screw up on that tubing and secure it, so it's not going anywhere. So this would come up and go wherever you need it to. Maybe you need to come out of the ground and go straight there. Maybe you need to come out of the ground and you need to do a 90-degree elbow. Depending on what you're doing, maybe you need to come out of the ground and do a T. These are all different parts to being able to do that. And I'll talk about this in a second. There's two ways to, when you're at the end of your tubing, so obviously the water doesn't keep going out, right? So this is one of the cleaner ways. I'll show you that, and I'll show you an example of the other way where you just bend the tubing over and it secures it that way. Doesn't look as nice, not a fan of it, but I do have that over in the planner over there. So I wanted to give you a basic overview of that, all right? So now we've got these components here. Let's talk about the various components to the drip. Once you get, let me take this off of here now for illustration purposes. Now, actually, let's not do that. Let's leave that on there for a second. And let's take this and undo this and pull this tubing off so I can show you, again, some of the other ways you're going to attach that. Comes off, and then take that and squeeze it off like so. And it's a good thing that it's on there good. So let's move that off to the side so you can see that. So when you're coming, so picture this coming out of the ground now. So this is up to the level of the ground. Now, depending on what you want to do, you want to keep certain things in mind. Where is this in relation to where you mow? You know, what about weed eating? Consider that. Is it an area where you're weed eating? And so you want to really think about the placement of that, so that when your kids are mowing the yard, or you're mowing the yard, or maybe your wife's mowing the yard, maybe you're that lucky and you've got a great wife who will do that kind of stuff. My wife is a wonderful wife, but she relegates mowing responsibilities to me and the boys. So anyway, you want to decide where that's going to come out. Now, what I typically do is once I come up, I'll come out of the ground maybe 6 inches or so to give myself plenty of room in case I need to cut it, and then I'll cut it back down when I need it. If you hear there's a bunch of construction by me right now, so you're hearing a big thing back up. I don't know if you hear that, beep, beep, beep. But anyway, that's going on like crazy. You're building like 5,000 houses behind my house. So anyway, so we got that there. So we're coming up out of the ground. Again, we talked about it before. You can come out and you can do a 90. You can go any direction you want, turn it any way you want. Once you get it there, tighten it down, you're good to go. Come out of the ground, maybe you want to do a T. Maybe you want to do a T, and maybe you've got a weird configuration. Maybe you need to come out of this and go that direction, and come out this, go this direction. Well, if you're doing that, why not just turn it this way? But then again, I digress. But regardless of how you want to do it, you can go in any combination of elbows and T's or couplers that you want. I guess I forgot to bring a coupler, but you can imagine what a coupler is. A coupler is that. And then it turns into that when it's got the T. Okay, so anyway, we got that. All right, so when that comes out of the ground, now, if you need to go, and once it comes out of the ground, say you're coming out of the ground in a T, right? That hose is coming up like so, and there it is coming out of the ground. Well, what you can do is take the stake into the ground, and then, of course, you can already imagine that. You know, this is going to flip down and over there like that, go down into the ground, and it'll hold it down. So that's one of the things you can use for that, one of those components. All right, so once you get to the end of it, let's say you're coming out and you're doing a T, which is what I did in my planner, and I'll show you that. It comes out, so I've got one set of tubing going to the left, one set of tubing going to the right. So obviously that tubing is going to end somewhere, and we got to be able to stop the water from coming out, right? So again, there's some components where you can just bend it over and it just basically does like that, like you would when you're trying to drink out of a hose when you were a kid and you didn't want it to splash all over your face. That's what you do, right? But the end of it, they've got this little handy thing right here, which basically is the end cap, right? And so you can tap that onto there, and then that's a cleaner way of ending it all out, right? So the water doesn't come out. Again, all these components I'll talk about when I'm actually going over some examples of where I've actually done it. Now, Once you get the tubing where you want it, that's when you need to tap into it. Now, hang on a second, let me cut. If you don't have one of these, you really need one of these in working for irrigation. You know, it's what you use to cut PVC. You know, I cut the tubing with it. I'm gonna cut this with it. You know, at the end of the day, this stuff is real thin, so I can just cut right through that. But anyway, you can see this box of tubing that I have, or this, it's 1/8 inch tubing, or I'm sorry, 1/4, 1/8. Wouldn't get much water through that, would you? 1/4 inch tubing, and this tubing right here is 1/2 inch. Now, you'll see different types of tubing. There is some tubing you'll see in the landscaping area, and I should have brought that. I've got an example out front, which caused me to have to go back to Lowe's and buy more because I didn't pay attention. I thought that was it. But it's a much thicker. This is very thin. So the other tubing is thicker is when you need to be able to have a flex kind of, you're trying to move irrigation and it's not 90 degrees, you need a bit of flex. You can use that type of tubing for that. But that really doesn't have anything to do with any of this. So once you have this piece here, and let's say you've come out of the ground and now you're going 90, or you're going to the right, okay? So I'm gonna take this off of here, but for the sake of the illustration, picture that I've left it on there. From here, then you need one of these tools. What this does is wherever you want to attach this, let's say my plant is centered. Let's say I'm the plant, right? And I want that tubing to come over and be right in front of me or wherever I want to place it. So then I just go from the top, I push down until, I don't know if you probably can't see that. I'll try and take a picture and get it up close with it. But you can see where I poked a hole in it, right? Well, that's where these type of pieces come into play. You know, you've got T's, you've got elbows, you've got couplers like this. So what you would do if I'm just going in one off of that is I want to press that into there until it's all the way in. It's a little bit easier when it's on the ground, okay? All the way in. You'd think it leaked, but it doesn't leak. And then you cut your tubing, whatever size you need it to be, and then you press that down over this part right here, okay? Now I've got that like so. Now this is obviously going to be a little bit longer than that. And this little handy dandy thing right here is your sprinkler head. Now you can see right there where it taps into it right here. Now you can turn the top of it and it will increase or decrease the amount of flow that comes out. So let's say you've got a certain section of your yard, and I'm going to make up some crazy number, not that you would ever water it that long, but you're going to water it for 40 minutes, right? Well, 40 minutes in your planter by one plant may be too much water. And so you may need to adjust that down so you know where not as much flow comes out. Or maybe you're like me and it only runs for 15 minutes because it rains a lot here in Florida. Then you kind of want to open it wide open so you can get plenty of water out, okay? Because it gets hot here and it dries up quickly. So that is all dependent upon your needs, where you live, and what the weather is like there. All right, so then that would tap into here like so. Boom, boom, boom. All right, so now I've got my hose right there, staking that, or oh, I said I was a plant, right? So staking it in the ground right there, and now let's do it right here, and now that water's right beside my plant. Now in mine, I do one for every plant. Depending on some of them, depending on what size they are and how far apart they are, you may be able to put one in between each plant, and that be sufficient. You can look and see. If for some reason you poke a hole in the tubing and you realize, oh crap, I didn't mean to do that, I don't like it there. Well, don't feel bad. They make plugs that you can put into. I don't have an example here because I haven't made that mistake yet, thank goodness. I'm sure I will, believe me. But at the end of the day, you can plug that back up, so don't sweat it. I mean, I wouldn't arbitrarily, you really want to think things out. Get it all run, step back and take a look at it, and then you can get an example, right? So those are the fundamental pieces to getting this done. Now, up front, I have a situation to where I'm having to run, I've got steps in front of the house, and I didn't want to tap into two different sprinkler heads, one on each side. One was located in a perfect location. Again, I'll show you that. But I wanted to be able to run this tubing here, this part right here, all along the under part of the ledge of the front porch. So then I went on, I haven't installed these yet, that's one of the things I've got to do, but then I can go in and now I can put that on there, and so now I can screw into my stucco. I've got some Tapco screws, go into my Tapco, and that just right up under that lip, you can't really see it because it's black, and it runs the whole length of the porch. So that's the reason I showed you these. Now if you're like me, the pack that had like 10 in it was $4, and the one that here that has what, how many has it got, like 100 or something like that? It's got a bunch of them, was $8. So you're kind of foolish. Even if only use 2 more the rest of your life, you still got it, and I like having extra things. I don't know about you, but I have a separate toolbox for all of my drip parts. Anything I have drip related goes in here, okay? So I've got that part, a smaller box, like keeping that separate. And then I've got a much bigger box down here. Oh, you will need, those are empty, but you will need some PVC glue to work with that PVC. But at the end of the day, now this is really irrelevant to what we're talking about, but I've got a separate tool chest for doing all of my irrigation, and has all my pieces, parts, components, everything I need to do to repair irrigation, including extra sprinkler heads. Why do you say that? Because my kids can't seem to ever remember where in the world the sprinkler heads are. And they're just going around with this or that, running them over if they're out of the ground. Most of them are in the ground, so it's not a problem. But I replace a lot of sprinkler heads, so I'm waiting for my kids to graduate and get on out. I got one graduating next week, got 2 more years to go. And then after that, I don't have to worry about it anymore. But then again, after that, I got to start mowing the yard, and well, that sucks. So anyway, so this is kind of the overview of what you need. Now these hoses, the reason I have that outside, they typically come in 50-foot sections, pretty cheap. 50 foot's only like $8 at Lowe's. That was the price as of today. You may be watching this 20 years from now and they've gone up to $3,487 because inflation's gone crazy. Don't get me started, I digress. Anyway, let's get back to it. So now let's take this show on the road and let's go around and look at some of the irrigation that I've done so far so you can see some actual examples. All right, so here you can see examples of where the 1/2-inch tubing is running. Down in there you can example where the sprinkler head comes out at. And what that does is goes the whole length down there. Now here in a second, I'll take you down there to the end. Here you can see that's one way of controlling the water flow from exiting the tubing. Again, it's not as a clean a look, but I'll show you in a little bit how the other alternative works, okay? You can see there where I've tapped into the hose. Now sometimes if you want that to come straight out, you'll tap into the side of the hose, not necessarily the top of the hose. Just depends on what you want to do. But then it keeps that pretty plant right there looking pretty. We like pretty, right? And so ultimately, you can kind of see going down through there, this is how this particular planter looks, right? So I happen to like it. I don't know if you do, but I hope you do. But as an example, right? You can see how that tubing, if you follow it, you can see all the various connection points where I tapped in. And here I have one beside every plant that's in there. Here's another good example. We get into there. You can see how that's done, how it's tapped in back there. Those grow into really large, beautiful plants, colorful. And these grow year-round, and they can take a beating from the sun here in Central Florida, which is pretty brutal, if you know what I mean. So here you can see an example where I've done it by my house. I hope you dig it, because I do, because I don't have to worry about watering it anymore, if you know what I mean, right? All right, so here you can see the reason we need to do this, right? Right, if you look over there, that was a plant that died. And so I've got to replace these plants because actually my son helped me with this. I recently had a neck fusion done, so I kind of had to tell him what to do, and he did it for me, and he did a fantastic job. But anyway, as you can see, I want to be able to keep these things alive. And the way we are right now, we're going to kind of struggle with that because they're not getting watered. It's just the regular sprinkler system's not doing what it should. All right, so here you can see where I tapped into the existing sprinkler head. Now that sprinkler head was awfully close to the edge of the, here let me pull up here, to the edge of the paver there. So I didn't have room, so I kind of did the opposite of what I showed you at the table, but regardless, you get what I'm saying. And so I had to come in behind it. So I came out of that with coming straight up, and then I come out of the ground doing a 90-degree T, or 90-degree T. Now I haven't filled that back in yet. I like to let things run for a few days to make sure I don't have any problems. Then I'll close that back up and put some sod back over top of that. But as we come up, you can see here where I came in, and I also did a a 90-degree angle right there, and that's taking it up the planter, as you can see, coming out. I'm going to go get it from the other side. Hang on. Here we are right there. You can see us coming up. And then you can see there where I tee off, go to the right, because that's a shorter one. And then I come up here and I tee off and go to the left. And you can see in there where I put my little sprinkler head. Now, keep in mind, I didn't talk about this when I was sitting over at the table, but there's all kinds of different sprinkler heads for this stuff. So kind of look into that. This is giving you a basic overview how do you get it to the sprinkler head. Then you can choose what kind of drip you want. They also make pieces that can just tap right into the, let's see, my finger right there, see if I can get in focus, into the hose right there, where you can literally come right out of the hose if you need to. That's also some options that you have. So we're gonna go around the front of the house and I'm gonna show you kind of what I'm doing up there. Hope a lot of this is making sense for you so far. Okay, so here you can see along the front of the house, we're gonna need to replace all of these. Well, we can bring these plants back to life, but the only reason we chose these plants to begin with is because they were basically kill-proof. You couldn't kill them if you tried, although you can tell we came close. You can see where I ended it here, and then ultimately this is going to be mounted under the lip. Right now I haven't done that. Remember I talked about before about using those brackets. As you can see here, I've run irrigation into all of them. So I needed to cross this step right here. And so the challenge to crossing that step, obviously you don't want to step on it. So all that'll get mounted underneath that lip and you won't see any of it. So there's another example of how you could do this. Now here is where you can see here where I tapped into the existing. This was not needed here because I have these rocks here. I got to pull these weeds, get that replaced. Weeds are almost impossible to deal with here in Florida. But anyway, you can see where I tapped into it right here, and then I tee out and go left and right. Going right, going about 6 feet, going to the left, going 54 feet. So that's kind of a long throw. But that's kind of how I did that. And that's, again, that's going to be mounted under there. You won't see it. And we never have to worry about killing these plants ever again. Thank you. Okay, so now you've got a chance to see the examples that I've used. Now, this by far is not the only way things can be done. It just gives you a general understanding of how easy this really is to do on your own. And I think, you know, I think the one up front and the back here, I think all in was around $80 cost-wise, you know, material-wise. Now I ended up with extra material, extra hose, extra these, extra a lot of extra things. I like having those things because if I want to do it, I'd like to not have to go to the hardware store to be able to get it because these things are PVC and all these components are relatively inexpensive. So that's up to you. You'll have to decide what you want to do. So again, if you're like me, I don't like to pay anybody to do anything if I can do it myself. I've always been a firm believer, if someone else can learn something, then I should be able to learn how to do it too. You're probably here because you feel the same way. So have fun going out and doing this. You know, take these projects on. You know, I don't normally do videos like this per se. My videos tend to be more towards videography, making YouTube videos with camera equipment and various audio equipment. I also have a recording studio, so most of my stuff is centered around that kind of stuff. But I figured, you know what? I don't have anything to do today, so I might as well show you people how I did what I did. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this. And if you like what you saw here, hit that subscribe button. That stuff really helps me. And if you could hit that notification bell and that like, that'd be great. So you guys from Central Florida out to wherever you are, and God knows where, I hope you're safe. I hope your family's good, and I pray the Lord will put blessings all over your lives. Until next time, you have a great day now. Tubing, and it's good, you're good to go there, okay? Does that make sense? All right, so let me get this back off because I talked, shit. All right, let me do that again. I should do this for bloopers because I really didn't think that through very well.